All right, welcome folks to 25th, I think, of October, something like that. Anyway, October 2022, the return of the weekly webinar, the Bluelight webinar, where I'm here to answer any questions that you have about the police recruitment process. So we'll see how long this takes. It won't be any longer than an hour, normally around 45 minutes. And it's great to be back running them. Bit impromptu. I worked out I had a bit of free time this evening. And I thought, why don't I run one of those webinars that I've not run for ages now, because they've always been so useful and helpful for people, especially when you're faced with a very confusing recruitment process. There's almost 50 different ways of joining the police in the United Kingdom, almost 50 different ways, which is just absolutely bonkers. So we've got this evening, we've got Adam, Joanne, John, we've got Jenna, Jane, Emma and Corey. For those of you who might be watching us on the replay, you won't be able to see that there's Jenna, Jane, Emma and Corey. Hopefully they'll be able to join us on video at some point this evening, but we've also got John, Adam and Joanne. So let's start then. Questions and answers. That's what we're here to do. Hopefully you've got some good questions for me. I've been doing this now for 26 years in the police sector. So I started helping people with promotion boards and specialist interviews 26 years ago. About 10 years ago, I started helping people with the police recruitment process. So there's probably around 12, 13,000 police officers in the job as a result of my support over the years. Various webinars, seminars, one-to-ones, online courses. And in terms of police officers, there's a good few hundred, easy, getting probably several hundred that have been promoted or succeeded in specialist interviews as a result of my support from forces all around the United Kingdom. So let's start off then. Who has got the first question? You're all muted, by the way, at the moment, and the reason I do that is to stop all the sort of funny Zoom feedback loops, but just raise your hand or just shout out if you've got a question. Hopefully you have, otherwise it's not a very good question and answer webinar.
Hello, can you hear me?
Is that Corey?
Yeah, speaking. Yeah, sorry, I can't have the video on at the minute. It's a bit of a pain, but I'm okay with voice.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Cool. So my question relates to, I've got my interview for Bedfordshire Police next Tuesday, actually, via Teams. I'm quite lucky because they've told me what the 5 questions I'm going to be assessed against. One of them of which is we take ownership. And basically I had a conversation with one of the officers today, and they reckon the question might be about your skills and weaknesses. And I was sort of wondering how they could pose that question to you and what the best way to answer it is. Because obviously in the we take ownership CVF guidance, it does say at the bottom, understanding your own strengths, areas for development and taking responsibility.
Yeah, all right, okay. That's a good question. We'll come back to that in a moment. And I think what I actually might do, I might load up the questions and then answer them, see if I can weave them all together because some of them might be connected. So thanks, Corey. That's a really good question. What else have we got? What other questions? Questions.
Yeah, I was wondering, can you do the OAC over several days or does it have to be done in one sitting?
Okay, yeah, I can answer that. No problem. Thanks, Adam. Other questions?
Hi, I'm basically doing the OAC. I think I got two emails today. One saying I think the date was wrong. It was like September, and then one I got an additional email saying that I've got one starting on the 1st of November. I'm assuming, like, obviously because the old ones, I'm assuming that was a typo. But the only thing is, I'm just getting like a little bit confused. It's like, would there be a particular date in between, or do you know what I mean? Because I've got two different ones.
Okay, yeah, we can work that one out as well, Joanne. You're not the first, you're not the last.
Yeah, I saw on your Facebook page that people were dealing with that. Also, I've got another one if that's okay. So I'm just preparing for the stage 1 for the OAC. So I purchased your option 1, and it says obviously you can get different questions, and obviously I know that you don't know what they are, but I've sort of like prepped for the first one, but the second one could be a completely different answer. Do I have to prep for that one also, or or do I try and combine both of them, just, or all 5 of them really? I'm just trying to think like how much, and obviously I know I've got to put a lot of work in, but that's a lot. So
Yeah.
just
No,
seeing
that's
where
all
I
right.
stood with that really.
That's okay, Joanne. So you've got the online assessment centre course.
Yeah.
And, you're talking about the stage 2 interview, not the stage 1, stage 2 interview.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah,
But the first bit, the 5 questions they have
Yeah.
to answer for 5 minutes, yeah.
All right.
So,
Okay. Okay, we can work on that as well. Yeah, there's a very simple answer for you there. You'll be
oh,
pleased
perfect,
to know.
thanks.
What else have we got then, folks? Any other questions? Yeah. Go on, John.
I'm in the I've just emailed an application form for Thames Valley. I'm currently serving military. My 22 years will be up October next year. So clearly I'm not going to leave before my 22 years are up next October. But I can do employment, paid employment on my terminal leave from the RAF. So I'll be 45 and a half next year by the time I can sort of start training, etc. So it's really his initial days. I'm not even close to the OAC times or anything at all. So I'm here more to listen to what other questions other people have, and I can sort of learn from them as well.
Yeah.
So if I so apart from I'm not sure the complete process and how long. I mean, I can imagine it can take anywhere between 6 and 12 months, etc. I understand that, but more to do with how long it takes between each stage.
Okay, all right. I can look at that for you as well, John. Okay. If there's any other questions, please do let me know, but let's rattle through these to start with. So, Corey, your first question around Bedfordshire Police. I'm just going to mute you all, if that's okay. Your first question about Bedfordshire Police, they actually give you the questions. You've worked out that actually they don't give you the questions. So, Corey, what they do, I think Bedfordshire have about 3 or 4 different banks of questions. And a lot of forces do this, so you don't get into that sort of, oh, my friend went for an interview yesterday and these were the questions that they got asked, because you might go for the interview the next day and find that the questions are very, very different. And you might be thinking, hang on a minute, my friend told me that the questions were going to be. And it's because you use different question banks. And so you've realized actually that being told what the competency is or the value might not be that helpful. Because just being told we take ownership, you might be thinking, oh, right at the very top, I identify and respond to problems. That's one of the behaviors. So that's a likely question. Please, can you tell me about a time when you've had to take responsibility for a problem or a challenging task? Very common question. But equally, you've had a nod from someone to say, might be about skills and weaknesses. As at the very bottom of the behaviors, it talks about I understand my own strengths and areas for development, take responsibilities for my own learning to address these gaps. Let's see what else is in there that might be different. I recognize where I can help others and willingly take on additional tasks to support them. Please, can you tell me about a time when you've supported another person who might have been struggling with something? I regularly seek feedback to understand the quality of my work. Can you tell me about a time when someone has given you some feedback that's been critical of something that you've done, and what did you do about it? Let's see what else we can glean from this. I will admit if I've made a mistake and take action to rectify this. Can you tell me about a time when you've made a mistake? How did you approach that mistake? What was the mistake, and how did you approach it once you'd actually realised you'd made a mistake? I demonstrate pride in representing the police service. Tell me about something that you're proud of. Tell me about something you've done recently that you're proud of. So can you see, folks, that I see this in the Facebook group all the time. And by the way, if you're watching this on a recording, you're thinking, what Facebook group? What's this one? There's almost 21,000 people in it. And everyone who's attending here tonight, they're all members of that group, because that's the only place I actually posted the link to this workshop. But I often see people putting in a post to say, I've got my final interview coming up. Has anyone got any advice? And I'll see advice like, just make sure you've got an answer for each one of the competencies. Can you see how that's awful advice? Can you see how that's actually dreadful advice? Because out of the one competency of we take ownership, we've just plucked about 6 or 7 very, very different questions. Very different questions, because they're all in the behaviours. Any of those behaviours are fair game in terms of the sort of questions that you might get. Excuse me. And so what I suggest to my clients, those who are on the interview course, and we practice this weekly, you know, there's weekly webinars where we actually practice, and you get access to, actually it's got to be like almost 2 years worth of webinars, recordings of webinars. And consistent themes are really the need to be flexible, because Adam, you think that the question might be about your strengths and areas for development, but equally they could ask you anything. Any of the questions that I've just posed, they could ask you any of those, any of them. So we need to be ready for anything really, because also the other thing that your force might do, Bedfordshire might do, is they might decide actually that question bank process, that system, we don't like it. We're going to change it. And next week, there's a completely different set of questions. They might decide it's going to be a professional discussion, or they might decide that you're going to do a presentation. They could change things, and that happens often as well. The College of Policing Online Assessment Centre, that's been pretty, you know, pretty static for the past 2 years. And prior to that, the Search Assessment Centre and the Day One, prior to COVID, they were all pretty static. So the College of Policing side of things always stays pretty static, but forces are always changing what they do. So bottom line, Adam, be ready for everything and anything in terms of your own strengths, your areas for development. I'd suggest you need to be aware of those anyway. It's covered in the online course for the interview course, where we take a look at ways that you can discover what you think your own strengths and areas for development might be. So Adam, let me pose that question to you. What would you say that your one thing is that you need to develop in terms of a skill or a value?
I think that was aimed at Corey. I think that was his question.
Oh, was it? Oh, my apologies. I'm talking about Adam. Oh dear. So my apologies, Adam. Corey's gone. He's disappeared. Corey's gone. Oh well, Corey, I hope you were watching this on the replay. It was Corey, yes. My apologies, Adam. I don't know why. Oh, because you're next one down. That's why. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. All right, Corey. Well, Adam, what force are you going for?
Humberside.
Humberside. Oh, Humberside Police have a really interesting informal professional discussion. Am I right?
Yes, the two.
Yeah. Where you've got to do a 10-minute presentation about what it would mean to be a Humberside police officer.
Yep.
Yep. Where they also include a lot of little subheadings. And then they're going to do a little interview with you after.
Yes.
I would not be surprised if they'd ask you that question, where they'd say, so Adam, what would you, so I'm going to pose that question to you still. What would you say your one area, one skill or behavior or value is that you feel you need to develop?
Probably more teamwork, I reckon.
Teamwork, that's a big area to talk about. What specifically within teamwork?
Sort of working well in a smaller group, because I've got lots of experience working in larger groups, just smaller group work, really.
Okay. And what would you add to that?
Just give examples of sort of where I have had experience in it, and also sort of draw away from the lack of experience.
Right. What you're saying is very honest, and it's fine, but what you need to do is make sure, and I know, I appreciate I put you on the spot here, but what they want from you is a lot more detail. So specifically, how you've identified that this is an issue, how you've identified that this is an area you need to develop, and what specifically you have done to start addressing it, and some examples. I don't need to give that now.
Yep.
But that's the sort of detail that they'll be wanting. Your answer should be around 3 to 4 minutes long. And don't make it 3-4 minutes long just so you can drag it out, but it should be good quality stuff, structured approach, detail. That's what we're looking for. That's what's going to give you a high mark on the scale out. All right, my apologies, Adam, for going to you thinking you were Corey. And Corey, where have you gone? What happened? It's just halfway through his answer, he disappears. So Adam, your question was around the online assessment centre. Have I got several days to do it in? Oh yes, you have. When's your week start?
Next week.
Next week. All right. So you have several days to do it in. You actually have 7 days to do it in.
Yep.
Even though you might have an email from your force to say, we would prefer you to do it all in one day. That is just to benefit the College of Policing assessors. It has no benefit to you whatsoever to do it all in one day. Actually, what I'd suggest is your head would be completely and utterly cabbaged towards the end of the process, and you're not going to do yourself any favours. Spread it out. Spread it out across the 7 days. But what I'd also do is make sure that you are completing everything on day 6, just in case there's a technical problem, because the last thing you need to be doing is leaving it to the wire and doing it at 6 o'clock in the evening and then finding there's some tech problem and your day runs out at midnight and you can't get the tech problem sorted out. And it's just a real pain in the neck trying to get all of that sorted with the College of Policing. So what I'd suggest to all of you is start the process off on day 1 of your week, and then perhaps do another exercise. Do your stage 2 interview on the first day, give it a day or 2, then do your written, and then give it a day or 2, and then do your briefing. And that, spacing it out like that gives your head time to get into the right sort of space you need to do the next exercise. And it also gives you a bit of wriggle room towards the end, just in case there's any tech problems. Does that help, Adam?
Yeah, thank you.
And what they're looking for in the online assessment centre is basically just tick the boxes. Just tick the boxes. If you're on my course, if you follow my guidance, just follow my guidance to the letter. This is not about you demonstrating your enthusiasm or motivation for joining the police. This is not the time. They just want you to tick the boxes. Tick, 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 tick. And then that's it. Excuse me. I was just seeing if that was a message from Corey. It wasn't. So online assessment centre, that links in with the question you asked, Joanne. You've got 2 emails. One of them is saying September. Well, that's clearly, that's not going to happen, is it? September's been and gone. But you've got given another one to say that you'll be sent the links on the 1st of November. It'll be the 1st of November. Yeah, it'll be 1st of November, and you've got 7 days to complete it.
I thought it would be, but you know, anything, I know it was in the past, but you never know, like whether if they put like meant to do a different month, or do you know what I mean? So that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, what happens with a lot of forces is they don't refresh their emails. They just do a copy and paste, but they don't. It's just a lack of attention to detail, and it really confuses people. I've seen a couple of those this week where people have got completely bonkers dates. One of them was March. You know, someone sent me a link and said, I've been told it's going to be in March. Isn't that a bit too much notice? I said, it's not March. Go and query it with them. And they came back and said, oh no, it starts next week. No, we shouldn't have said March. What we meant was October. You know, just how are you meant to know this stuff? But it will be the 1st of November. Your second question. So you're prepping for, let me get my guidance out. You're prepping for the interview. I don't know which package you're on, John, but tomorrow night is where we practice the interview questions. It's so
it's the option 1, so I don't get the webinars.
Oh, get practice with us. Oh no.
I know.
It'll be. Well, they're
I
also.
think it's the link that you sent me. So yeah, I might. Yeah. just go ahead with it.
All right. Okay. If you want to drop me a line, if you want to upgrade to the webinars, I know it shows us £70 on the thing, but I can do it less for you.
Okay,
Just
thank you.
don't tell anyone. Just drop me a PM, a message, and we can do something for you to get you on tomorrow night, because this is where excuse me, this is where the that sort of confusion gets cleared up.
Okay.
But what I've done, I'll give you an example of what I've done here. So for people who are thinking, what's he on about? What's Joanne on about? These are sample interview questions that we use on the course. Once I know that you're going to be asked questions on integrity, public service, transparency, we take ownership, and we're innovative and open-minded, I can come up with what the possible questions are going to be. The top question is the one that I think is more likely. So we'll just look at integrity. The top question will be, can you tell me about a time when you've demonstrated professionalism? Now, where that comes from is because I geek out on this kind of stuff, so you don't have to. And by the way, that's the competency and values framework, but you don't need it. You don't need to look at this at all, because I've already done that work for you. So if we look at integrity, it talks about we maintain the highest levels of professionalism, making sure we uphold the values and ethical standards of the police service. Now, you've not been in the police service before, but what they want to hear about is a time when you've demonstrated the highest level of professionalism. So that's a likely question. It's the sort of question that's cropped up on interview boards before. But there's also, in the behaviours, I demonstrate courage in doing the right thing, even in challenging situations. So that could be, and also another behaviour is challenging colleagues whose behaviour, attitude and language falls below expectations. So they're also popular questions. Tell me about a time when you've done the right thing, even when doing a different option would have been easier. Or tell me about a time when you challenged someone's inappropriate behaviour. Challenging someone's inappropriate behaviour, I think, is quite very, very niche. And it's the sort of question you get at your final interview. So what I've done is I put what I think is the most likely one at the top, and then work myself down. But if you think about it, Joanne, if you can talk about doing the right thing, even when doing nothing or something else would have been easier, that's demonstrating professionalism. And if you've got an answer where you've demonstrated professionalism, it needs to be something that's challenging or difficult. So you probably did the right thing, even when doing nothing or something else would have been the easier option. So there are variations on the same question, excuse me, except for the very niche one about challenging someone's inappropriate behaviour, which I've got to be honest is probably the sort of question that you're going to get on your final interview, if you've got a final interview, depending on the force you're going for. Which force is the one you're going for?
So I applied for Cambridge, but Bedfordshire Police gave me the final interview. Okay.
Well, they're both they're part of the same tripartite.
That would be one.
Yes, there's a tripartite thing. It's a Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire, and Hertfordshire. The BCH tripartite arrangement. So this is where it can get a bit confusing, I think, because you can be applying for Cambridgeshire but get an interview with Bedfordshire.
Yeah. Either way, it's close to me anyway, so it's fine.
All right, it's the same, you know, shuffling people around.
It's Huntingdon, so it's probably closer to me anyway, so it's fine.
Right, well, that's good.
Yeah.
But take the first force that will accept you, and I'll tell you one in a moment. So you will have an interview after this, which is quite a values-based interview. The BCH interview is quite a values-based one. So you could easily get a question about you challenging someone else's behaviour, because that really does demonstrate a very strong value in terms of integrity. So hopefully that's cleared things up a little bit. And what I'd say, Joanne, is the questions I've given you, the sample questions I've given you, have worked for hundreds, probably thousands now, over the past 2.5 years since they introduced this during COVID. I think they should have got rid of it by now, but I don't think they've got the capacity to design something else whilst they're doing the 20,000 uplift. So whatever question you've formulated for your integrity as an example, once they say this question is based on the value of integrity, just deliver your answer.
Okay.
You just deliver it. The one that you prepared using my guidance, the one that you prepared using the supplementary points at the bottom, Just deliver that.
Okay,
and you will
thank
pass.
you.
You'll pass. And the reason I'm so assured of that is because it's worked for so many over the years. And only a couple of months ago, one of my clients came back and said, I've just done the online assessment centre. I've just done the stage 2. I'm really worried about it because I got everything in the wrong order. I had all my answers prepared in the order in which you've given them on your preparation sheet. And that's the order I delivered them in. But that's not the order that the questions came in on the actual online assessment centre. And she's really worried because she gave the integrity answer for a public service. We take ownership for
yeah, that's what I'm worried about doing as well.
Yeah, but you know, just to make sure you've got them all lined up in your mind. But she still passed.
Oh, okay, amazing.
She still passed. So you know, I'm setting a really high bar for you. But actually,
because my other thing as well. Sorry to ask another question. So I've basically done the SAL, as you said.
Yeah.
And I've kind of done it as like an essay. So am I able to like read that? As long as I practice and practice and practice, am I able to have it in front of me, even though that they can't see it? Can I just read that in a, like I say, in a way as I would say it, if that makes sense? Or do I actually have to have notes? Like, because I'm thinking if I write it as I would say it, I know I'm not going to miss anything.
Right. Well, the guidance from the College of Policing is that you should not use notes that you've pre-prepared before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guidance. Most people make notes on a piece of paper like this because they're going to ask you the question and you've got 1 minute to make notes and then 5 minutes to deliver your answer. And remember, there's no one there. There's no one there. You know, you're just delivering it to software. There's no one there. So you can make notes in that 1 minute. You can make notes on something like this. I'm a bit weird. I like to make notes on something that looks like this.
Yeah.
I'll say nothing else.
Okay.
I'll just let that just sink in. Because the thing is, you can see my piece of paper that I'm making notes on here, and now you can't. You can see it, no you can't.
Yeah.
They can't look down. The technology does not work like that. We don't have 3D cameras on our laptops. So it's your choice.
Okay, thank you.
It's your choice. But you can make notes. What you choose to make notes on is totally up to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Join us tomorrow night, Joanne. You honestly, you'll love it. You'll love that practice session.
I will do. Thank you.
Let's see what else we've got. That's done that. Excuse me, I've still got that lurgy. I just can't shake it off. John, thank you for your service to start with. I mean, awesome. You know, 22 years next year in the Royal Air Force. Awesome, brilliant. And now we're looking for career number 2. Yay. Yeah, now we're looking for career number 2, yes?
Yes, yeah.
You're not on your own. So many people just like yourself planning ahead, thinking, how else can I serve? Because, you know, being a Crown servant is a pretty special thing, isn't it?
It is, but the one thing listening to, and I think the younger ones, it's how sorry, I'm not, no offense intended, but the people I'm in my mid-40s, and people they're more they're better with IT and technology and presentations and stuff. Well, I've never had to do anything like that.
Right.
Last weekend I bought my first laptop. I haven't even taken out the box yet. I've never owned a laptop before. So I've only, you know. So anyway, things like that. When you say that, I'm not sure how it works for Thames Valley.
Well, you're here now. You're here now. So using technology now.
This is with a phone.
That's fine. The online assessment centre is just software that flashes up on your screen once you've got the link, and it guides you all the way through it. By the time you go through the process, they might have introduced something different. I don't know. Thames Valley Police, though, at the moment, is awesome. I think they made a big mistake with this because you can actually join Thames Valley Police without ever talking to a real human, except for your uniform fitting.
Yeah,
and your fitness?
I've emailed my. I've been in contact with one of the people at the recruitment. Obviously, all I've done is forward on my certificates.
Yeah.
GCSEs from 90 something, and
your O levels. Your O levels.
My work history from the Air Force and a previous job, and that's it really. And that's the level. That's the stage I'm at. So I'm waiting to hear back.
Okay.
It's a long way away.
Do you have? This is where things may get interesting, because at the moment, Thames Valley Police are offering the initial police learning and development program, which they said that you have to have applied or vetted, etc., by the end of March. I think they're stopping it in April, the 1st of April, end of March. For myself, because of the time, my 22 years is up this time next year, so I'm not going to do anything before, because obviously it's financial suicide, pension payout, etc. But I can start working, I don't know, August to September next year. So I could start a training date in that from August, September on terminal leave next year. So the Ipple Dipple sort of route is out for me, but they're pushing me through the PCDA one. Okay, the Ipple Dipple won't be an option for you. No, not anymore. College of Policing are going to bin it.
Yeah,
I think it's a big mistake.
I think so too.
I think people just like yourself, because you're probably thinking the last thing I want to do is a degree.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why do I want to do a degree in my 40s? And I don't know what your family situation is like, but a lot of people who really struggle with a degree are people like yourself. People like myself. You're getting on a bit in life, not too much, but it's just the last thing on your mind, doing a degree, and especially if you've got family, it can be a real challenge. My prediction is that at some point the fourth entry route will come back again, something like the Ipple Dipple, but they'll call it something else, and it'll probably lead to some kind of vocational qualification at the end. But that's my prediction. But College of Policing are very dogmatic about this degree business, and so the golden rule applies. Those who hold the gold make the rules. So what I'd do, John, is I would apply now, because it can take a year easily to get through everything. But once you've got the online assessment centre under your belt, it's valid for like a year or two, depending on the force. So you have that under your belt. Thames Valley Police do not do a final interview at the moment. It's complete and utter madness that you can join the police. There's several police forces where you can join the police without talking to a human. So your first day in the job is the first day when anyone is going to speak to you about your motivation, your values. So the hardest question you'll get asked is, what's your inside leg measurement? And at the fitness test, they'll ask you, do you understand? And you'll just have to scream at the top of your voice, yes. And then do the bleep test. 5.4, walking apart.
That's simple. Mine's still about level 9, I think. So
you'll be able to walk that, and you probably will. It probably will seem like a walk. Now there might be some people watching this thinking, actually, the bleep test can be quite hard depending on who you are. I do know that it can be a real challenge for some people, especially women and women who've had children. It can be more of a challenge for them. Not all, but for some. So I'm not sure if the bleep test is a good test of fitness, but it is, like the online assessment centre. I think it's a terrible assessment instrument. It's all online. There's no human contact. You're going to go into a job where human contact is everything. Your ability to communicate is everything, and yet they're assessing your ability to be a police officer by having no human contact whatsoever. But it's to your benefit, because if you follow the guidance I give you, you will pass. You can't not pass. It's so easy to game the system. It's so easy to game the online assessment centre, which is why those who do the hard work I ask of them are scoring 90% plus. And some of them are scoring 100% in their competency-based interview. I've not seen a 100% in the stage 3 yet, but I've seen 90% plus is what we're aiming for. That's our target. So what I'd suggest, John, is get your application in now.
I think I've done the initial application because they asked for. The lady in recruitment, she did that over the phone because there's an issue with the initial link, the tal.net thing. So that she did that over the phone. It took about 45 minutes. Did that over the phone, and asked for my certificates and work history. So I don't know. For me, I don't know what stage I'm at now, and how many more stages there'll be. But
the next stage is a national sift.
Yeah.
Because the application form, they've got rid of all of the competency type questions, things like a time when you've made difficult decisions, or what do you understand the role of a police officer to be, or all of those sort of questions that used to exist have all gone now, and it's because of the 20,000 uplift. Some forces are not hitting their targets in terms of the numbers of officers they need to recruit by the end of March. They've got to have bums on the seats, warrant cards in your pocket by the end of March to hit these targets around the 20,000 uplift. After that, and this is why I'm saying get your application in now, John, because after that, you're not going to be able to join until like next summer, autumn. My prediction is, and watch this space, but my prediction is forces will contract in terms of the numbers of police officers they're recruiting. If we just look at the economic situation at the moment, we've got Richie Sunak and Jeremy Hunt warming us up for big cuts.
Oh, there's financial cuts everywhere. Yeah. That's just, well, I won't say too much, but the security budget is.
Yeah, the financial efficiencies means austerity, and education and health aren't going to be. They're not going to take a big hit. Any government that takes a pop at reducing the budget of education and health post-COVID will certainly lose at the next election. So the police are going to be an easy target, because the police have had, what have they had over the past 3 years? Funding to recruit an extra 20,000 officers. Rishi Sunak today mentioned it in the House of Parliament on his first Prime Minister's questions, talking about they're the party of blah, 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 blah. We're the party that's put an extra 15,000 police officers on the streets, forgetting that they're not extra at all. That 20,000 uplift just replaces, well, it doesn't even replace the number of officers that were lost, because 21,000 officers were lost over the past 10 years. Prior to that announcement about the 20,000 uplift, they got rid of 21,000 officers, they reduced the size of the police in England and Wales by 21,000. So they're not extra at all. But that's the spin that will be put on it. And what forces will be told is your budget's remaining static, which means it's a 10% reduction, because inflation is at 10-something%. So actually, what will happen is forces will have to contract in terms of their budget and what they've got available, which means that they've already sold all their police stations, they've already sold all their assets, they've already used up all of their reserves because the government required it of them. 89% of the budget gets spent on salary and pensions. So the only place they can make cuts is in recruitment, because if you're a Crown servant, you can't be made redundant. So they can't make police officers redundant. They've already stripped those people who they can make redundant down to the bone. So in terms of support staff, they've already made all of those cuts over the past 10 years. So my prediction is, and I've already talked with, I won't say which force it is, it's a large force. They're already readying themselves for, they're having discussions with the university that delivers the degree programs for them about their staffing for next year and how they're going to have to contract a lot, because they're just not going to recruit the same sort of numbers or anything like it. So why is it so important to start now and get yourself a good high mark? Is to get inside their talent pool before the talent pool completely closes. Because what they'll do is they'll just utilize people who are already in the system, and they'll just close the doors on recruitment. Once we know what's going to happen in terms of efficiencies, my prediction is the police will probably have a static budget, which means a 10% reduction. We are going to see forces closing the doors on recruitment. I saw it happen 12 years ago when austerity came in. It's going to happen again. And we will see forces only taking people through to the next stage who are in the talent pool. They'll only take them through to the next stage if they've got a really high mark. If anyone thinks I'm scaremongering, I'm not, because I saw this pan out a decade ago. This is what happened a decade ago, where forces were, GMP were only recruiting 30 a year, 30 officers a year. It's insane. Some forces didn't recruit at all. There were several forces that just didn't recruit for a period of 3 or 4 years. So this is why I talk about get yourself into the system now. Go for the high marks. Go for the high marks. It's not a shameless plug, this, John. Come and join us on the course. Come and join us on the online assessment centre course.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
the best reason for yourself as well is that the military will pay for it.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure how to go about that. That's the stage I'm at now.
Right, there's a resettlement fund. There's various resettlement funds you can access. One of them, I can't remember what its exact name is, but it's
ELC.
No, it's not that one. No, there's another one that's it's like a slush fund that's about £570.
Yeah, that's called the IRTC.
The IRTC,
It's
right?
£534. Yeah.
It's how much? Sorry,
534.
534. I knew it was something like that.
But you can also combine it with an SLC, which is £175, which you can use that a year.
Right. So you can use that to pay for this, and all you've got to do is complete the form and send it to me. I sign it, email it back to you, and you get the money back. So it's a gift if you're in the military. It's an absolute gift. You could use it to purchase one-to-one coaching, and they'll still pay for it. Not widely known, but the military will pay for this. And why shouldn't they pay for this? Because you've served the country, and you deserve it. And you deserve to get the best opportunity to get through to the next stage. The other thing I'd suggest though as well, John, is if you can, I don't know if you're tied geographically, is look to apply to different forces as well. You can apply to as many forces as you want. You don't have to apply.
Yeah, I'm Reading way, so for me, even though I'm not from that area, I live now in that Reading area, so this is why I've applied for Thames Valley. And the local areas I've applied for is Reading, West Berkshire, Bracknell, etc., etc.
Right.
But
Okay.
I thought about Hampshire because I'm from Hampshire. But yeah,
if you can apply to other forces. It's just, as a backup, because I mean, for those of you who are here and for those of you watching us on the replay, forces can just completely close down recruitment. I don't think Thames Valley will, because Thames Valley recruited all the way through austerity, because the problem Thames Valley have got is retention. They're losing lots of officers who are either going to the Met, where they get paid a lot more, or they're losing them to other sectors because the job market is so competitive in Thames Valley.
That's the other one I considered was the Met, because I can jump on the Elizabeth line, if
that would be well worth considering. Apply for the Met. There's nothing to stop you applying for the Met tomorrow. You can apply for as many forces as you want. The person who's got most options is capable of making the best decisions. And so I would do that and just have other forces in the bank. There's one of my clients at the moment who's got 12 applications in. 12. And he's going for interviews for all of them.
He can relocate then.
He can relocate, he's in a position to relocate, but he's already had 5 offers. He's still doing more. I keep saying, stop, you don't need to do any more. And he's saying, no, it's great. I'll have like loads to choose from. And he's walking all the interviews as well. He's not failed anything yet. I've never seen anything as bonkers. It's not bonkers. If he's watching this, my apologies. I don't mean you bonkers. Well, I do really. I've told you this. Too many forces. 12 is too many. But he's enjoying himself, bless him. And he is going to be able to choose from a multiple myriad of different forces. Anyway, hopefully that's helped you, John.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm waiting for the next stage. I'm waiting for them to get back to me now. So I think the next bit, that's after the SIFT. I think there's like is there an initial vetting? And then
no, they'll just do a PNC check or something like that. But you'll be fine on vetting.
Some DBS cleared anyway, etc. I mean, I don't know why they don't fast track a lot of military anyway, because all the vetting's already been done.
It's different vetting. It's a different type of vetting.
Yeah,
it's different type of vetting. It's different. So, but they should fast track anyway. They should fast track all of you. The fact it takes 6 to 12 months. Actually, it doesn't take 6. I don't know of any force that recruits in 6 months. 7 or 8 months is about the shortest I've seen. Normally it's about a year. The longest I've seen is 2.5 years. 2.5 years.
A year suits me fine. That's perfect. Perfect. Yeah, this time next year, great. Yeah.
Yeah, this time next year.
Yeah.
But they're normally quite flexible with the military, because they appreciate the military have only got certain dates where they can leave, so they'll hold you, they'll put you in a bank and just hold on to you. So you should be fine. Stick with us, John. We'll get you through.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
There's Emma just appeared. Awesome to see you, Emma. I don't know if we'll wrap up. I think we've covered everything, but I don't know if you've got any questions, Emma.
I have a question. I've passed the online assessment centre, but I went to the final interview and I failed my final interview. And on the feedback, it said that I need to look more into the wider focus of future-based questions, future focus, the wider implications of future focus questions is how they worded it.
All right. And which force was this for?
Cleveland.
For Cleveland. Right. So you're the one that's applying for Cleveland. Sorry, it's just a little standing joke I have. Cleveland Police, I think they've bettered their reputation, but their reputation several years ago was in absolute tatters.
Yeah, it's still not great. But anyway, because I filled with Cleveland, Durham said that they'll put me straight to final interview, and I've heard that Durham like to ask the future focus questions as well. So I was like worried about failing it again.
Forward-facing questions. So give me an example of a question that you struggled on, Emma.
One, I can't remember what it was. It was something to do with the integrity one, I think. Integrity, honesty, but Durham have different values anyway, so I don't know how that.
Forces that make up their own values, when you look at them, they're just the CVF worded differently.
Okay.
So I try and get people not to fret too much about the CVF, because I'll take care of this for you. Forward-facing questions, this is what you're looking at. So the question might have been something along the lines of, how in the future as a police officer would you challenge someone's inappropriate behaviour? If you witnessed an officer demonstrating inappropriate behaviour, what would you do? Was it something
that's one of the ones they asked me.
Yeah. Common question. Forward-facing questions, you can't use a sort of structure, because I recommend for rear-facing questions a structure of describing the situation and the impact on others, describing what you aim to achieve, which is like a task, and then considering the options that you considered to achieve that aim, the actions you took, not just what you did, but how you did it, what the result was, what the learning was, and then for your final interview, you forward pace yourself by demonstrating your knowledge and understanding of why that behaviour is important, and just 1 or 2 lines about how you would implement that behaviour once you're in the police. Forward-facing questions. There's so many people struggling with this, because if you look up on Google how to structure an answer to a forward-facing question, you're not going to find much that makes any sense. And these are especially popular with forces who, of course, they run promotion boards. Every force runs promotion boards, but they're popular questions on promotion boards. So questions for future sergeants and inspectors along the lines of, how in the future as a sergeant or an inspector will you ensure that your team has an ethical culture where inappropriate behaviour, where officers feel comfortable in challenging inappropriate behaviour? So you can see how that question can develop for future sergeants and inspectors. It's a common question. The way to answer it is, first of all, describing the why. Why is it so important that police officers feel comfortable and able to challenge inappropriate behaviour? And from there, we can then talk about exactly what you would do if you were faced with a situation. And this is where, as opposed to the rear-facing question where you're describing a scenario that you've dealt with, as opposed to what most people do, which is a shopping list of I'd do this, I'd do this, I'd do this, I'd do this, I'd do this. It's all too vague, and it's just like a big shopping list. Create the scenario. Create the scenario. And what you could do, and easily do with Cleveland, is you could just put into Google Cleveland Police misconduct, and it'll bring up shed loads of misconduct, because Cleveland Police is probably the force that has the most misconduct in it per head of population and per head of officers. I don't say that flippantly or in a jovial way. It's just that Cleveland has seemed to have so many problems in terms of misconduct. I think it was about 6 years ago, they had to completely disband their professional standards team because of the corruption within the professional standards team, and replace everyone in it with officers from outside the force. There's one of my old colleagues who transferred to Police Scotland as a senior officer, came to Cleveland to work in their professional standards. So they were using officers from over the border who were completely disconnected with England and Wales to come in and try and put things right. So it won't be hard, Emma. I would just, actually, you do that for any force, you'll find misconduct. But Cleveland just seems to have been behest with these sort of issues. And this is why they're asking that question. They're asking that question because the future of Cleveland needs to have officers who are confident in being able to challenge inappropriate behaviour. So I'd select something that's actually happened, and I'd say, so for example, recently there was a case where this would have required an officer to actually challenge that behaviour for the misconduct to actually come out into the open. This is how I would go about challenging that behaviour. And you describe not just what you'd do, but how you would do it. You with me so far, Emma?
Yeah.
Yep. And once you've described that, at the end of it, you can say what that will result in. So what that will result in terms of the police, something called organisational justice, which then links in with something called procedural justice, because the concept is that if you feel comfortable in the policing environment in the organisation, you feel comfortable to be able to challenge inappropriate behaviour, you feel comfortable that people are going to respect you, and you're going to be treated well because you've challenged that inappropriate behaviour, that you feel included, you feel inclusive. And I've challenged inappropriate behaviour in the past as a police officer, and the response was to move me. Let's move him, he's a troublemaker. And that's what I remember being called that. I remember when I got promoted to sergeant, my inspector, first thing he said to me was, "You've come here under a bit of a cloud, don't you?" I challenged someone's behaviour, someone who hit a prisoner in the custody office. There was no cameras in custody back then. And the reason why there's cameras in custody everywhere is not to, it's not for the safeguarding of police officers, it's to stop people being thrashed. It's to stop people being assaulted in custody. And I was the troublemaker. I was that was the attitude before. So why is it important? We need to have a culture where officers feel comfortable to challenge behaviour, where they will be respected for it. They won't be moved to a different station because they're a troublemaker, that's been one of the problems in Cleveland. Is if you've highlighted inappropriate behaviour, you've been marginalised in the past. There's several cases of it in Cleveland. One of them cost Cleveland getting on for £1 million at an industrial tribunal because they were that marginalised. Eventually, they had to leave the police, took them to IT, and completely cleaned up. And rightly so. And even that getting on for £1 million wasn't enough, because that was to make up for their lost career and pension. And it really, getting on for £1 million wasn't enough. So you can talk about what it will result in, and then you can talk about that organisational justice, and then taking it into the community, and that procedural justice, and that leads to legitimacy within the community. The public see the police as a legitimate arm of law and order and justice. You've got confidence in the police, and they're more likely to report things to the police, more likely to take part in investigations, more likely to report who is committing crime to the police because they trust them. So that's. I bet you're thinking now, Emma. I wish I'd said that on the day.
Yeah, that actually helps, because the example I gave was because they said, would you report behaviour to a supervisor? And I said, well, not all behaviour needs to be reported to a supervisor. What if your colleagues just left their hat in the car? I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm going to tell the supervisor he's left the hat in the car. And then he gave me a different example, and I was like, and then I explained that but I don't think I would have gone into this much detail as what you did. And I think that's where I went wrong with it.
Yeah, it's the detail. Leaving a hat in a car. There's nothing wrong with leaving a hat in a car.
I can think of anything bad.
Leaving a hat in a car.
Because he's supposed to wear full uniform. The only thing I could think of that would be a good example was uniform. I didn't want to say like anything like too bad because I know like I'd read some really bad things about the force.
Oh, punch-ups at parties with senior officers and racism, overt racism. Oh my goodness, where do I start with Cleveland? Whew. I would so get yourself thinking, for all of you, get yourself thinking about this scenario. Well, these are some scenarios, and you're gonna have to excuse the language, but this is a sort of language that they may use on the interview, because it's a sort of language that's inappropriate. So I'm going to use some inappropriate language now. So I'm quoting it. It's not the language I would ever use. But here's a couple of examples. You're at a crime scene. The crime scene is a sweet shop that's been broken into. There's been a burglary overnight, and you're there with a colleague, and you are protecting the scene whilst the key holder comes, and so you can also ensure that the scene is preserved for the crime scene investigator in the morning. It's about 4 in.the. You and your colleague have been on since 5 o'clock. You've had no refs. You've been pulled from pillar to post, and your colleague's starving, and you're starving. Your colleague picks up a Mars bar and goes, "Oh God, I'm starving." Opens it, starts eating it. What would you do? I'm not asking for the answer now, but what would you do? Second scenario, you are on patrol with a colleague and you attend a traveller's site to where one of the travelling community wants to report a generator that's been stolen. Your colleague takes the crime report, and then when they get back in the car, they tear it up and say, "I don't believe a word they're fucking saying." You know when they're lying because they open their mouths. I'm just gonna say that it's lost property. They've misplaced it. There's no theft, and the result is that over the radio. What are you gonna do? You're out with your tutor constable, and you attend a fast food place, takeaway, for your refs. They're provided with a meal, and they don't pay. They walk off. They just walk off and don't pay. What are you going to do? You are out on patrol with your sergeant or tutor constable, and as it's a night shift, you're driving past a nightclub, and your colleague looks at a woman and says, "Look at the tits on her." What are you going to do? You don't need to answer those questions now. And by the way, that last one was me saying that's not sort of language I would ever use. But that came from an officer actually who, when they actually looked at that woman who their colleague was referring to, it was an ex-girlfriend of his. And he didn't challenge the behavior. And he wrote about it. He wrote an article about it, and it was quite a moving article about how angry he felt, but he didn't do anything. And 2 months later, that officer was sacked at a misconduct hearing for sex offences. So this is why it's so important to nip things like that in the bud. But how are you going to deal with those things? I mean, that one's quite a, I'd always challenge that one. But what about the others? They're not so clear cut, are they? Well, perhaps the traveller's one is. But what about the, getting free food at the, I don't know. We're not, we haven't got time to explore it now, but those are the sort of scenarios I would come up with. Or they might even give you a scenario like that. Some forces will give you that kind of scenario and say, how would you deal with that? And they'll play devil's advocate with you. Oh, I'd report it to my supervisor. Would you really? Well, what would you do before that? What if your supervisor, what if your sergeant turns around and says, look, you're not at effing training school now. This is the real world. How are you going to deal with that? They're going to put you on the spot, and they're going to test your mettle to see if your values and your heart is capable of enabling you to do the right thing. Well, that's a bit serious, isn't it? I've ended a bit of a serious note there. But Emma, what do you think? Is that giving you some food for thought?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Come and join. Well, actually, we're going to practice some of these. This Sunday evening is the next interview webinar. I don't know if are you on that program, Emma?
No, I'm not. I work Sunday evenings, but I did a mock interview with a detective inspector at Cleveland, so I think I'll ask him when I see him on Sunday.
All right. Serving police officers are sometimes the worst people to do mock interviews with, because I've got another group which is full of over 400 serving officers who are working towards their promotion boards and specialist interviews. Police officers don't, on a regular basis, do interviews, so they're often really bad at doing interviews. So, but it's completely up to yourself, Emma. We run the webinars on different days as well, but we're going to practice that one, and we record them all as well, so you can get access to all the recordings. I know it's a shameless plug, but let's get you a pass next time. Let's get you a pass. There is a structured approach to dealing with those forward-facing questions, and there's all sorts of conundrums get raised by those challenges I've just given you. They are full of conundrums, but if you can recognize those conundrums and you can talk about them in a detailed way at your interview, you're going to nail it. You're going to absolutely nail it. I don't know what sort of questions Durham asked. Durham changed their questions all the time. They are constantly changing their questions. The recent ones, they had some forward-facing ones around. They put you at a scenario, a domestic violence scenario, and ask you how you're going to deal with the returning male, and they throw a few conundrums in. And the other one is person who's homeless, who's behaving. How are you going to deal with that one? But they changed them every month or two, Durham. So you're always going to get something different. That's what they were a couple of months ago. They will have changed them since. I know Durham changed their questions on a regular basis. But anyway, go for Durham. Durham's an awesome force, by the way. Durham it's like Cleveland and Durham next to each other. They're like so opposite. Durham has been one of the best performing forces in the country for years. They had Mike Barton, an incredible chief constable, who knew the name of every one of his sergeants, inspectors, chief inspectors, superintendents. He knew all of their names, and he knew the names of a lot of officers. There's a lot of officers would report walking past him in the corridor, and he'd just say, "Good morning, Peter, how are you?" And he'd be thinking, "I've not even got my name badge on. How does he remember my name?" He was so awesome and caring, and just a brilliant, incredible person. He still is, by the way. You know, he's not died or anything, but he's still incredible. But Durham, great force, great force. Go for Durham, Emma. Go for Durham. All right. So, folks, time to wind up. That's been well over an hour. I'd said 45 minutes, didn't I? This happens all the time. How was this evening for you? How was it? Awesome.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you. Brilliant.
Good. Thank you. You better watch the recording of this. There will be a recording. I'll post how to access the recording in the group. There's some gems in here. We've covered some absolute gems this evening. For those of you watching this on the replay, we must run some more of these. And if you're watching this on the replay, check the links below. Excuse me. Shameless plug for the courses I've talked about. Why am I shamelessly plugging it? Because they work. They work. And this is how I make my living. I've got the best job in the world, except for being a police officer. That's the best job in the world. But the second best job in the world, after being in the police for so many years, I can help so many people just like you succeed in the process. So thanks for joining me tonight, and look forward to seeing you very soon on some of the webinars. Take care. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you.